The train had been moving for maybe 4 minutes when a woman I had never seen before dropped into the seat beside me, took my hand in both of hers, and said, low and fast, "Please, don't pull away. You're my husband for the next 3 hours." I looked at her. Dark hair, a green wool coat, panic held very carefully behind a very calm face. And then I looked past her, 3 rows back, at the tall man who had just boarded and was scanning the car with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. And somehow, without one word of explanation, I understood that this stranger needed me. So I turned my hand over, laced my fingers through hers, and said, loud enough to carry down the aisle, "There you are. I saved you a seat." That is how I met my wife. Let me back up. My name is Miles Corbin. I'm 34 years old, and I work as a paramedic in a town on the north end of the line. I spend my days keeping strangers alive on the worst afternoons of their lives. And I'm good at it, because the one thing I know how to do is stay calm when everyone else can't. My hands don't shake. They never have. It's the only useful thing about being a man who feels everything on the inside and shows almost none of it on the outside. I was on that train because of my father. My dad worked this exact rail line for 30 years. He was a conductor, punched the tickets, called the stops, walked the aisles in a gray uniform that always smelled faintly of diesel and peppermint. He knew every regular by name. He used to say his whole job came down to one thing. "Miles, I make sure strangers get home safe. That's it. Doesn't matter who they are or where they're going. While they're on my train, they're mine to look after." He died 3 years ago, on an ordinary Tuesday, and every year on the anniversary I ride his line, from one end to the other, alone, wearing his wedding ring on my right hand, just to feel close to him for a few hours. That's who I was when Elise sat down, a numb man riding his dead father's train. Because I'll be honest with you about the state I was in. After my dad died, something in me just switched off. My wife at the time, Rachel, watched me go somewhere she couldn't follow, and after a year of living with a ghost, she left. And she wasn't wrong to. "You disappeared, Miles," she told me at the end. "You're still breathing, but you left 2 years ago and you never came back." I didn't fight her on it. She was right. I'd become very good at keeping strangers alive, and completely useless at being alive myself. Before I tell you how a woman I'd known for 4 minutes ended up being my whole life, if you believe the best thing that ever happened to you can walk in the second you've stopped looking for anything at all, do me a quick favor and tap that subscribe button, because this channel is full of stories exactly like this one, and I'd hate for you to miss the next. All right. Back to the train. The man 3 rows back was named Grant. I didn't know that yet, sitting there with a stranger's fingers laced through mine. All I knew was that Elise's hand was ice cold and gripping mine like a railing over a long drop, and that whoever this man was, the sight of him had scared her enough to marry the first stranger she could reach. He came down the aisle. Of course he did. Men like that always come over. "Elise," he said, stopping at our row, and the smile he wore was the kind of smile that's really a display of teeth. "I thought that was you. Small world. You're headed to the wedding too, I'd guess." "Grant," she said. Her voice was steady. Only I could feel how hard she was squeezing my hand. "I am." His eyes flicked to me, to our joined hands, to the ring on my right hand, which he couldn't have read the meaning of. "And who's this?" And this is the part I still can't fully explain. Because I'm not a fast man, and I'm not a liar, and the calm I have is the calm of a man who deals with facts. But something about the way this stranger had said please, and the way this Grant was looking at her, like she was a thing he still had some claim on, made me do something I'd never done in my life. I slid my father's wedding ring off my right hand, and under the cover of the seat back in front of us, I pressed it into Elise's palm and closed her fingers around it, and I said, "Easy as anything. I'm the husband. Miles." I put my arm along the back of her seat. She's told me approximately nothing about a wedding, so I'm assuming it's someone she'd rather not talk about. Grant, was it? I watched Elise's thumb find the ring in her palm and slip it onto her own finger, warm from my hand, and hold it up just slightly, just enough. Grant's eyes went to it. A wedding ring. His whole face recalculated. "Husband," he said. "Elise, you didn't mention you'd gotten married." "I don't mention a lot of things to you anymore, Grant," she said. "That's rather the point." He stood there a moment longer, that smile curdling. Then he said, "Well, congratulations. I'll leave you two lovebirds to it," in a voice that made lovebirds sound like an insult, and he went back to his seat 3 rows up, where I now saw a woman was waiting for him, younger, glossy, checking her phone. Elise let out a breath that shook at the very end of it, and she did not let go of my hand. "I am so sorry," she whispered. I saw him bored and I panicked. I've been dreading 3 hours in a train car with that man for a week, and then there he was, and you were the only person sitting alone who looked— She stopped. Who looked kind and safe. "I'm so sorry. Give me a minute and I'll move and give you your ring back and pretend this never—" "Keep the ring on for now," I said quietly. "He's watching in the window's reflection. Look." Grant's eyes were on us in the dark glass. "You picked a husband. You're stuck with me for at least until he stops looking. Might as well tell me what I've married into." She almost laughed. It came out wet. And then, because we had 3 hours and a lie to maintain, and because sometimes it's easiest to tell the truth to a stranger you'll never see again, Elise told me everything. Her name was Elise Warner. She was 30, and Grant was the man she'd been engaged to for 2 years, until 8 months ago. "Everyone thinks I destroyed it," she said, turning the ring, my father's ring, slowly on her finger. "Everyone thinks I'm the villain. His family, our friends, half my own family. The story going around is that I cheated on Grant, that I humiliated him, that I broke off the engagement 3 weeks before the wedding out of nowhere, because I'm unstable and cruel." She stared at the seat back. "None of it's true. He cheated. For most of the second year. I found out, I ended it, and he got to everyone first. He rewrote the whole story before I'd even stopped crying, and by the time I understood what was happening, I was the monster, and he was the wronged man everyone felt sorry for." "So correct it," I said. "Tell people the truth." She shook her head, and here's where it stopped being a simple story about a bad ex. "I can't," she said. "The wedding I'm going to. The one he's going to. It's my little sister's. My sister, Katie. And she's marrying Grant's cousin. The families are joining. If I stand up and tell everyone what Grant really did, if I blow his whole reputation apart the week of the wedding, I don't just hurt Grant. I set off a bomb in the middle of my sister's marriage, into his family, on the happiest day of her life." She looked at me. "So I ate it. I let them all think I'm the crazy ex who broke a good man's heart, because the only way to defend myself is to detonate my sister's future. I've spent 8 months being the villain in a story I didn't write, to protect someone I love, and now I have to go sit at that wedding and smile while a whole room pities Grant and whispers about me, and I could not walk into it alone. I couldn't give them the picture they're all expecting. Poor, unstable Elise, still single, still bitter." Her voice cracked. "So I grabbed a stranger and called him my husband. I'm not proud of it, but there it is." I sat with that for a long moment. The train rocked. Fields went by in the gray light, and something in me, the switched-off thing, the part that had been dark for 3 years, flickered. Because I knew about swallowing a truth to protect someone. I knew about being calm on the outside, while something enormous went on underneath. And I knew, better than almost anyone, what it costs to disappear inside your own life while you're still walking around in it. My father used to work this train, I heard myself say. 30 years. He said his whole job was making sure strangers got home safe. I looked at her. I'm on this train today because he died 3 years ago, and I ride his line every year on the day, and I've spent those 3 years being about as switched off as a person can be, and still have a pulse. I turned my hand over, the bare hand now, the ring on hers. So here's what I think. I think you're not the villain in anybody's story. I think you're the only decent person in a room full of people who let a liar tell them what to believe. And I think for the next 3 hours, you're going to stop apologizing to me, and we're going to be the most convincing married couple this train has ever seen. My father would have liked that. Looking after one more stranger on his line. She looked at me for a long time. Then she said, "You're a very strange man, Miles." "I've been told," I said. "Now, if we're married, I should know how we met." Grant's going to ask. Men like that always circle back. And so, for 3 hours, we built a marriage. We invented it detail by detail, laughing under our breath. Where we'd met. A hospital, half true. She'd sprained her ankle and I was the paramedic who splinted it, we decided, because it was easy to remember. How long we'd been together, a year. The apartment we shared, the dog we were thinking about getting. But somewhere in the inventing, the strangest thing happened. We stopped inventing and started actually talking. Really talking, the way you only can with someone when your guard is down, because none of it is supposed to matter. She told me about Katie, and how she'd basically raised her after their mother got sick. I told her about my dad, the peppermint and the diesel, the way he knew every regular's name. She told me she was a music teacher, that she taught 8-year-olds the violin, that it was the only thing that had kept her sane the last 8 months. I told her about the calls that stay with you, the ones you can't put down. She knew by the second hour that I take my coffee black. I knew that she hummed without realizing it when she was nervous, a little tuneless thing, and that she'd been humming it since Grant walked past. At one point, she asked me what the worst call of my career had been, and I told her, a young father, a highway, a night I still don't talk about. And she didn't flinch or rush to say something comforting. She just let it sit, the way you let a hard thing be as big as it is. And then she said, "That's why you stay calm, isn't it? Somebody has to be the steady one, so it might as well be the man whose hands don't shake." Nobody had ever put it that gently. Rachel used to call it being switched off. Elise, a stranger, looked at the exact same thing and called it steady. 2 words for one man, and only one of them made me want to keep living inside my own skin. Grant circled back once, around the halfway point, ostensibly to use the cafe car. He stopped at our row and made small talk designed to catch us out. "So how long have you two been married again?" And Elise and I answered in perfect overlapping sync. "A year, married in the spring," and I put my hand over hers with the ring on it, and Grant's smile got very thin, and he moved on. And when he'd gone, Elise turned to me with something new in her face. Not panic anymore, something almost like wonder. "You're good at this," she said. "I'm good at staying calm while someone's world is falling apart," I said. "It's basically the job." "No," she said quietly, looking at me. "You're good at making a person feel safe. That's different. That's rarer." She looked down at the ring. "Whose is this?" "Really, it's old. It means something to you. I can tell. You didn't want to take it off." "My father's wedding ring," I said. "I've worn it since he died." She went very still. "Miles, I've been wearing your dead father's wedding ring for 2 hours, to fool my ex-fiancé. I have to give this back." "I can't." He spent 30 years looking after strangers on this train, I said. I can't think of a single thing he'd rather that ring was doing today than helping one more person get where they're going. Leave it on, just for the 3 hours. That's all he ever asked of anybody. 3 hours, safe, on his line. And Elise Warner started to cry. Quietly. For real this time. Over a ring that wasn't hers, given by a man she'd known for 2 hours, on a train full of strangers. And I did the thing I hadn't done in 3 years. The thing Rachel had begged me to do, and I couldn't. I reached over and I held her hand while she cried, and I felt something in my own chest crack open. Some door that had been rusted shut since a Tuesday 3 years before, and light came through it. The 3 hours went too fast after that. We both felt it. As the train started to slow for her station, a quiet fell over us. The quiet of two people who know the container they've been living in is about to open and let the real world back in. She slid the ring off her finger. She held it out to me. "Thank you," she said. "You have no idea what you did. I'm going to walk into that wedding and I'm going to be fine, because for 3 hours I got to be someone who wasn't alone and wasn't a villain and wasn't pitied. I'll remember this my whole life." She pressed the ring into my palm and closed my fingers around it. The exact gesture I'd made to her 3 hours before. "Go home safe, Miles. Your dad would be proud of you." The train stopped. She stood up. She gathered her coat and her bag, and she gave me one last look, grateful and sad and final, and she started down the aisle toward the doors. And I sat there, a switched-off man holding his father's ring, watching the one person who'd made him feel alive in 3 years walk off his father's train and out of his life forever. I heard my dad's voice as clear as the peppermint. "I make sure strangers get home safe. While they're on my train, they're mine to look after." She wasn't home yet. She was walking into 3 days of a wedding full of people who thought she was a monster, alone, with only 3 hours of borrowed courage to hold on to. I grabbed my bag, and I got off the train. I caught her on the platform. She turned, startled, and I was out of breath and I had no plan, and I said the only true thing I had. "This is my father's train, and his rule was, you don't leave a person before they're safe," I said. "You've got 3 days of that wedding ahead of you, alone, and I've got a rental car app and no reason on earth to be anywhere. So here's my offer. Let me be your husband for 3 more days. Not a lie this time. A favor, from a friend, no strings, separate rooms. I'll sleep in the car if it's weird. But you shouldn't have to walk in there alone, and I find I'm not ready to be switched off again just yet." I held out my father's ring, "And you should hold on to this a little longer. I've got a feeling my dad's not done looking after you." Elise looked at the ring. She looked at me, and she started to laugh and cry at the same time, and she said, "You're the strangest man I've ever met." "You keep saying that," I said. "You married me anyway." She took the ring. I went to that wedding as Elise Warner's husband. And a funny thing happens when a woman everyone's decided is a bitter, broken villain walks in on the arm of a calm, kind man who clearly adores her. The story people have been telling themselves starts to crack. Grant tried, once, to get me alone and do the thing men like him do. The quiet threat dressed up as friendly advice. "You know she cheated on me, right? You know what you married." And I looked at him and I said, "Calm as I am at a car wreck, I know exactly what I'm standing next to, Grant. I've spent 3 days finding out. The question is whether everyone here's going to keep believing the version of events that just happens to make you the hero. Because I don't, and people are starting to notice which one of you flinches when the other walks in." I didn't raise my voice. I never do. He didn't come near us again. There was a moment at the reception I'll carry for the rest of my life. The band was playing, and the married couples were called to the floor, and Elise froze, because of course everyone in that room was watching to see whether the unstable ex and her mystery husband were real. And a slow dance in front of 200 people is a hard place to keep a lie standing. She looked at me, terrified, and whispered, "I can't dance. I mean, I actually can't. I'll step on you, and everyone's staring, and then step on me," I said, and I stood up and held out my hand. My father used to say, "You don't get people home safe by leaving them at the edge of the floor. Come on, let them stare." I walked Elise Warner out to the middle of that dance floor, and I put my hand at her back, and we swayed. Badly, honestly. She did step on me twice, and I leaned down and said, "Look at me." Not at them, just me. 3 hours on a train, remember? "We can do 3 minutes." And she looked up at me, and something in her face let go, and for the length of one song, the woman the whole room had come prepared to pity was the most luminous person in it. I could feel the story in that room, changing in real time. You could see it move across people's faces, the reweighing, the doubt about the version of events they'd been sold. Grant saw it too, from the edge of the floor, and for the first time, all weekend, he was the one who looked alone. "They're not staring the way they were an hour ago," Elise murmured against my shoulder. "No," I said, "they're not." "Miles," she said quietly, "I don't think this is pretend for me anymore. I need you to know that. Whatever happens when this weekend ends, it stopped being pretend somewhere on the train, and I don't know exactly when. It stopped being pretend for me," I said. "The second you asked whose ring it was, and then tried to give it back because you couldn't stand to keep something that mattered to me. That's not a thing a villain does. That's the whole opposite of a villain." She held on a little tighter, and we finished the song, and I didn't feel switched off for even 1 second of it. I didn't blow up the wedding. Neither did Elise. She'd protected Katie for 8 months, and she wasn't going to stop now, and I loved her for it. Yes, by the end of 3 days, I'll say the word, I loved her. But something shifted anyway, quietly, the way real things do. Katie pulled Elise aside on the last night and said, "I don't know your husband's whole story, but he looks at you like you hung the moon, and Grant never once looked at you like that. And I've been thinking about that all weekend. It wasn't the truth, not the whole truth, but it was a door opening. And sometimes a door opening is enough." We drove home together, the long way, 4 hours instead of 3. Neither of us wanted the road to end. Nothing happened fast after that. That's how I knew it was real. At 1 month, she'd taught me to tell her students apart by the sound of their violins through her apartment door, and my father's ring was still on her hand, and neither of us had mentioned giving it back. At 2 months, my coffee mug lived in her kitchen, and her humming, that tuneless nervous thing, had turned into actual songs, because she wasn't nervous around me anymore. At 4 months, Katie called Elise in tears. Grant's cheating had come out on its own, the way rot always does, through his own new relationship, and the whole family had done the math backward and realized which sister had been telling the truth all along. Elise never had to detonate a thing. She'd protected her sister's wedding, and the truth had still found daylight, just slower, the way it does when you're patient enough to let it. Katie's first words were, "I am so sorry. I spent a year believing him. Can you forgive me?" And Elise, who'd swallowed 8 months of being the villain to protect this exact girl, said yes before Katie had finished the sentence. At 6 months, I switched to a paramedic job on the south end of the line so I could be near her, and my whole team said I'd changed, that I laughed now, that the lights were back on. My dad's line. I ride it to work most mornings. At a year, Elise and I stood in a small courthouse, and I stopped being her husband for 3 hours, and started being her husband for good. She wore my father's wedding ring, she'd never taken it off, and I'd never asked her to, and when the judge said the part about rings, she just held up her hand and smiled, because she'd been wearing it since a train 4 minutes out of the station. I bought her a second ring, a new one, but the old one's the one she loves. My father's ring, on the hand of the stranger he helped me look after. I think about that train more than she knows, about the numb man I was, riding a dead man's line, so switched off I could keep strangers alive and couldn't feel my own heartbeat, and about the woman who dropped into the seat beside me and grabbed my hand and said, "You're my husband for the next 3 hours," thinking she needed me to save her. Here's the truth I've never told her, and maybe I never will, because some things are better just known. She didn't need saving. Not really. Elise Warner is the strongest person I've ever met. She'd have walked into that wedding alone and survived it just fine. Chin up, the way she'd survived everything. She didn't grab me because she couldn't do it without a husband. She grabbed me because my father wasn't done. 30 years he spent making sure strangers got home safe. And 3 years after he died, on his own line, on the anniversary of the day I lost him, he reached out one more time and put the exact right stranger in the seat beside the switched-off shell of his son and had her take my hand. She thought I was her husband for 3 hours, saving her from her past. She was the one who got me home. If you've ever had a stranger walk into your life at the exact moment you'd given up, the right person, the right day, like something bigger than luck was steering, I want to hear about it, because I don't think those things are ever really an accident. Tell me your story down in the comments, and tell me where in the world you're watching from tonight. I read every single one, and it honestly amazes me how far these stories travel. Somebody wrote in last week from a train, of all places, and I haven't stopped thinking about it since. And be honest with me before you go. If a stranger had dropped into the seat beside you and whispered, "You're my husband for the next 3 hours," would you have played along like I did? Or would you have pulled your hand back, kept your head down, and let them face it alone? There's no wrong answer. There's only the one you'd have to live with. If this story moved you even a little, do me one small kindness. Tap that like button so it finds the next person who needs it. Hit subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, because I'm here every week with a brand new story about the kind of love that shows up exactly when we've stopped believing it will. Ride safe. I'm glad you're here.